You're not addicted to your phone, you're addicted to being seen. You think what you want is connection, but what you really crave is confirmation, a glance, a like, a mirror. It feels harmless, even human, but if you step back, something far darker comes into view. This is exactly what Jean-Paul Sartre warned us about when he said, hell is other people. It wasn't sarcasm, it wasn't bitterness. It was a diagnosis. Sartre was a French philosopher, the godfather of modern existentialism. He believed that we are condemned to be free. No one assigns us meaning. We invent it moment by moment, choice by choice, but that freedom is terrifying. So instead of owning it, we run, and where do we run? We run straight into the eyes of others, begging them to define us so we don't have to. That's what Sartre meant. Hell is other people when we let them become our mirror. In his play No Exit, 3 people are locked in a room together. No chains, no fire, just each other. There are no mirrors, none, so if they want to know who they are, they must rely on what the others reflect back. But the reflections are not pure. They're warped by need, by judgment, by projection. One wants to be seen as brave, another as beautiful, the third as righteous. And each person becomes the cage for the others, feeding them false versions of themselves until they no longer know what's true. Sound familiar? You post something vulnerable, then watch it perform. You adjust your tone depending on who's in the room. You're praised and you feel powerful. Ignored and you feel invisible. You aren't living, you're being reviewed. Your entire identity, bit by bit, starts to depend on the response. You've traded the mirror for the gaze. And the gaze does not care who you really are. It only cares that you stay on script. That's Sartre's hell. It isn't flames, it's performance. It's the silent panic of realizing you no longer exist outside of how others see you. It's when the line between who you are and what they want has blurred so deeply, you forget there ever was a line. And here's the worst part. It doesn't feel like hell. At first, it feels like belonging. Until it doesn't, until you catch your own reflection and it's nothing but a mask held up by shaking hands. You don't remember who you were before the applause, you only know who you're supposed to be. That's when you realize the door was open, but you never left, because you didn't know who you'd be without the mirror. There's a moment in No Exit when it all clicks. The characters, Garcon, Estelle and Inez, are dead, locked in a room, no escape. But the room itself isn't the punishment. The punishment is this: they cannot stop performing for each other. They need each other's validation to survive, and yet the very act of seeking it traps them in a cycle of judgment and rejection they can't escape. Garcon wants to be seen as courageous, but knows he ran from a fight. Estelle needs to feel beautiful, but only through the eyes of a man who doesn't love her. Inez sees through them both, yet uses her insight to manipulate instead of liberate. They become mirrors with no mercy, each one reflecting not truth but need. Sartre called this the look. It's the moment you realize someone is watching you, and in their eyes, you become something. Not someone, something. An object to be judged, weighed, defined. You've felt it at work when your worth hinges on one person's opinion. In relationships, when love feels like a test, you keep failing. On social media, where even your grief is edited for engagement. The gaze isn't just external anymore, it's internalized. You start anticipating judgment, you start censoring joy. You start adjusting your very being to preempt disapproval, and it's subtle. That's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You're too much, you're not enough. Smile, stay quiet, be agreeable, be who they expect. This is bad faith, the existential lie we live when we surrender our freedom in exchange for acceptance. Because to live authentically is terrifying, it means risking disapproval. It means standing in your truth, even when no one claps. It means refusing the mirror. But we don't just tolerate the gaze, we feed on it. We perform, hoping to be loved. And over time, we forget that performance is not love, it's survival. So we become the role, we wear the smile, we master the tone, until one day we look in the mirror and see only costume. This is not melodrama, it's modern life. And like Sartre's characters, we often stay in rooms that destroy us, not because we're forced to, but because we've built our identity around the gaze. We need their approval like oxygen, even when it's poison. But the most chilling truth Sartre offered is this: you always have the freedom to leave. And most people never do, because they'd rather stay in the room with the lie than step into the world with their truth. We learn early that love is earned, that to be loved we must become something, something good, something easy, something wanted. And so we adapt, we mold, we perform. Love becomes a stage and we become actors, smiling on cue, softening our voice, shrinking our truth. We don't call it performance, we call it compromise. We call it maturity, we call it being kind. But beneath all those names is a quiet truth. We fear that if we show who we really are, the love will leave. This is not abstract. This is your dinner table. This is your marriage. This is the friend you can't disappoint. The parent whose approval you still chase. This is the unspoken rule you've followed since childhood. If you want to be loved, be pleasing. And that's where the trap begins. In No Exit, Sartre gives us three people desperate to be loved, yet incapable of loving. Garcin wants to be seen as brave, but he's a coward trying to be rewritten through someone else's eyes. Estelle wants to be adored, but only as an image, not a person. Inez sees through them all, but uses that insight to dominate, not connect. Each is starved for validation, each performs. And none of them are truly seen. They are not in hell because they are with each other. They are in hell because they cannot stop trying to be loved by each other. That's the warning. That's what Sartre wanted us to see. You are never more trapped than when your worth depends on someone else's gaze, especially when that gaze is what you call love. You think, if I can just stay beautiful, they'll stay. If I can just be agreeable, they won't leave. If I keep my feelings quiet, they'll keep loving me. But love that only stays if you shrink is not love, it's hostage-taking. Real connection cannot grow in performance. It requires risk, honesty, friction, shadow. And that's what most of us are never taught. We're taught to make ourselves easy to love, not to make ourselves real. The paradox is cruel. We crave closeness, but we present a false self to earn it. And in doing so, we ensure we will never feel truly known. Because how can anyone love you, really love you, if you've never shown them who you are? You might be adored, desired, admired, but not seen. And over time, that kind of love starts to ache. You lie in bed next to someone and feel utterly alone. You smile through anniversaries, you host dinners, you post photos. But somewhere in your body, a truth begins to whisper, this version of me isn't me. And that voice is the one you've spent your life silencing. Sartre's hell isn't just a place, it's a feeling. It's the unbearable dissonance between being loved and being invisible at the same time. So you tell yourself it's normal, that this is just what love becomes, that everyone wears masks. But deep down, you remember something different, maybe from childhood, maybe from a moment long ago when someone saw through the performance and loved you anyway. Maybe for 5 minutes, maybe for a single glance. And ever since, you've been chasing that feeling, trying to recreate it by becoming what others want. But the real feeling, the true connection, wasn't created by performance, it was created by presence. And presence can't exist in hell, because hell demands the mask stay on, even when it's killing you. There is a kind of death that doesn't come with grief, it comes with applause. It comes slowly as you become everything others needed you to be. As you smile through things that hurt. As you trade truth for comfort. As you call it success, call it stability, call it love. Until one day, you wake up inside a life you built and realize you're not in it. You're just keeping it going. That's not poetry, that's pathology. It's what happens when you've lived so long in the gaze of others, you no longer know what your own eyes see. Sartre called this bad faith, the quiet daily betrayal of your freedom. It's the waiter who becomes only a waiter, the spouse who becomes only a role, the person who lets every choice be dictated by what will keep them safe, liked, praised. It feels like discipline. It looks like control. but it's rot, soul rot. The kind you can't see until everything starts to feel hollow. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, saw this too. He called it the persona, the social mask you wear to survive the expectations of the world. But behind the mask, he warned, is the shadow, the truth you hid to stay acceptable. Your anger, your desire, your grief, your instinct, your power. We bury it to be liked. And when we bury it long enough, the mask isn't a disguise anymore, it's a sarcophagus. This is what Sartre dramatized in No Exit. 3 souls trapped in a room, the door opens, but Garson doesn't walk out. Why? Because he doesn't know who he is without their judgment. He needs them to rewrite his story, to redeem him, to reflect something he cannot find in himself. He isn't physically trapped, he's existentially dependent. And that's what most of us are. We keep seeking new mirrors, new partners, new jobs, new followers, new mentors. Each time hoping someone will finally reflect back the self we secretly long to believe exists. But no one can do that for you, because every time you ask someone else to tell you who you are, you become their prisoner. Even if they love you, even if they mean well. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Most people will never know who they are because they're too afraid to lose the version of themselves that others approve of. They would rather be admired than alive. They would rather keep the peace than reclaim the soul. They would rather stay in the room. And they'll tell themselves stories about duty, about sacrifice, about being realistic. They'll say this is what it means to grow up. This is what life requires. But deep down they know. They know they have unfinished music inside them. Unspoken truths, unlived lives. And every time they stay silent, nod along, smile on cue, they bury themselves just a little deeper. Until the self is no longer sleeping, it's gone. And the world mourns nothing because the world never noticed. Because what the world saw was the mask. The polished, professional, pleasing version that never made a mess, never asked for too much, never said the wrong thing. But here's what Sartre left us with. The door is open. It was always open. But you have to walk out without applause, without permission. Without the mirror telling you it's okay. You have to walk out alone. Because that's what freedom demands. And for the first few steps, it will feel like death, but it's not. It's resurrection. We spend our lives trying to be seen. But the moment someone actually sees us, we panic. Because most of us don't know how to be seen without performing. We've spent too long being mirrors, too long being masks. Too long bending ourselves into shapes that other people find acceptable, palatable, admirable. And the tragedy is we do this most in the places that should have felt safest, relationships. Where we say, I love you with a rehearsed smile and hide the truth behind our eyes. Where we silence what hurts to protect the illusion of peace. Where we mistake being wanted for being known. That isn't connection, that's containment. Sartre showed us what happens when people try to relate through performance. No Exit isn't a play about punishment, it's a play about projection. Everyone wants to be seen, but no one wants to be real. And so they orbit each other like planets wearing masks, demanding truth, offering none. But there is another way. Martin Buber called it meeting. And he believed it was the only thing that makes life real. He said there are 2 ways of relating, I and I thou. It's how we interact with most of the world. It's useful, it's functional, but it's hollow. We see the other as a role, a label, a means to an end. But in I thou, something different happens. You don't look at someone. You meet them, no filters. No roles, no manipulation, just presence, and presence is terrifying. Because it requires that we drop the persona. It requires that we stop managing impressions, that we stop adjusting our truth to keep the love. Real presence says, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to meet you. And that kind of connection, that kind of gaze, is the opposite of Sartre's hell. It doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't turn you into an object. It invites you to exist fully unpolished, unfinished. But most people never get there. Because to be seen without a mask feels like standing naked in a storm. Fromm, the psychoanalyst, understood this. He said, the task is not to feel secure. The task is to tolerate insecurity. That's the price of being real. Because the moment you start performing, you risk rejection. You risk being misunderstood. You risk being too much or not enough. But you also risk being loved as you are. And that risk is the doorway out of hell. Because the performance may keep you liked, but it will never make you whole. And wholeness only comes when you stop asking for approval and start showing up with truth. That's the door that Sartre's characters never walk through. The door that doesn't lead out of the room, but deeper into yourself. A place where love isn't about managing perception, but allowing presence. And when someone meets you there, without a script, without a role, without needing you to be anything but what you are, that moment is not just connection, it's resurrection. The door opens. In no exit, after all the torment, all the judgment, all the performative pleas for redemption, the door opens and no one leaves. Because they aren't trapped in the room. They're trapped in the reflection. They cannot imagine who they are without the gaze of the other. They have built their identity in someone else's eyes, and stepping beyond that means stepping into the unknown. That's the real hell, not the judgment, the dependence on it. And that is Sartre's final warning. The prison was never the room. The prison was the fear of freedom, because real freedom is terrifying. It's the moment you realize there is no script, no mirror, no one to applaud your choices. No one to blame for your story, just you and your authorship. You are the one who defines you. You are the one who lives your choices. You are the one who decides whether to stay in the room or walk through the open door. But that choice isn't made once, it's made every day. Every time you stay silent to avoid discomfort. Every time you dim your light to stay pleasing. Every time you edit yourself to stay likable. That is a choice to remain behind the gaze. And every time you say something true, even if your voice shakes, every time you take a step without knowing how you'll be received, that is the walk toward freedom. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Become what you are." Sounds like a command. But it's really a release. He's not asking you to become perfect or exceptional or even admirable. He's asking you to become what's already waiting beneath the persona, the part of you buried to stay seen. Because that part, the part you thought would make you unlovable, is the only part that can ever be free. And once you begin to live from there, the gaze loses its grip. It doesn't vanish. The world will still try to define you. The room will still call your name. The mirror will still tempt you. But it will no longer own you. Because you have stopped living as an object and remembered what it means to be a subject. A self, a soul. You'll begin to speak in your own voice, not because it will be heard, but because it is yours. You'll begin to make choices from the inside, not because they're strategic, but because they are true. And you'll begin to feel something rare. Not safety, not certainty, but a quiet, steady sense of wholeness. Not because everyone sees you, but because finally you do. If that moment has ever stirred inside you, if you've ever questioned the performance, sensed the mask cracking, or felt the quiet ache of forgetting your own reflection, then you already know. The door is open. And the only permission you need to walk through it is your own. If this video spoke to something you've been carrying quietly, share it with someone who needs it. And in the comments, tell us, what mask are you finally ready to set down?